Like, I've heard it all.
Yeah.
And so if you can't even talk about those things.
Yeah. Can't even get through the first date.
No.
How are you going to navigate a relationship?
Hey guys, welcome to the Emily and Todd Podcast. Today we are talking about a very interesting specific research study that just came out that says that 57% of single adults are not interested in dating. Before we get started, please remember to like and comment on this video as it does really help with the YouTube algorithm. So Todd, this study was really interesting because it brought up quite a few points. I'm just going to read them off for our viewers. So roughly 6 in 10 young men report being single, and of those men, nearly half were not interested in dating at all.
Wow.
The majority of single adults are not interested in being struck by Cupid's arrow, the study says.
Mm-hmm.
So of the 57% that are not interested in dating, they also broke it down into what people were looking for the flip side, for those that were interested in dating.
Okay.
7% were looking for casual dates only.
Mm-hmm. Which sounds low to me.
It's a very low number.
But, you would think based upon social media that it would be much higher. But,
right?
The numbers don't lie.
That's exactly what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
And then 22% were interested in either a committed romantic relationship or casual dates.
Makes sense.
And then 13% were interested in a committed romantic relationship only.
Wow. That sounds really low to me.
It's low to me too. But I guess that number is low because it is talking about the ones that want to date.
Mm-hmm.
So the huge chunk of those that don't want to date was already taken out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Then the study also said that the percentage of single Americans who are looking for a relationship or casual dates is lower than in 2019, especially among men.
Mm-hmm.
They concluded this because the number dropped from 49% in 2019 to 42% in 2022. 61 to 50% among single men and 38% to 35% among single women.
Mm-hmm.
Another point that they said is that the type of relationship single Americans are looking for varies by gender. Okay, so they broke this down.
Mm-hmm.
While 19% of men were looking for casual dates only, fewer single women said the same. I mean, that makes sense. I'm not surprised by that.
Mm-hmm.
We've said multiple times that women tend to look for relationships more so.
Mm-hmm.
So they concluded that a greater percentage of single women, 41 versus 25%, were looking for a committed romantic relationship only. So again, no surprise there, right? Because most
Mm-hmm.
women are looking for relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is the last point. Nearly half of single and looking adults have turned to online dating in the past year.
Mm-hmm.
Nearly half meant 45%. This broke down to 53% of singles that were 18 to 49 years of age and 25% of singles 50 years and older.
Mm-hmm.
There's no surprise there either, right?
Mm-hmm.
More people are online dating.
Of course.
And meeting that way. But they obviously don't like what they have because they'd rather not date, apparently.
Yeah. Yes. Shockingly big.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I came across this and I said, we've got to discuss this. And so it kind of started off by saying that, so let's preface it by saying it was between 18 and 30-year-old people. And so it was both genders. Mm-hmm. And that for guys, it was 6 out of 10 were not in relationships. Mm-hmm. And so out of that 6 out of 10, 57% were not even interested in dating or relationships.
Yeah.
So, essentially kind of short-term / hookup relationships or, full-on relationships.
Yeah. I mean, that's what's crazy is that both of those numbers are high, right?
Yes.
We know, we've already talked before on this podcast about how there's more single people out there in general more than ever. And especially for guys that are under 30, the number's crazy. And then on top of that, for those single people, the number being 57%, like think about just more than half of the single people that you and I may know are not even like going on dates. They're just not interested.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's this movement called MGTOW. And I'm sure most of our audience, if not all, are, understanding that process. But typically with MGTOW guys, it's more guys my age, you know, or around my age, meaning the fact that what happened is that they probably got divorced and kind of went through that system, and they're very jaded. And so it's kind of a cope in a way, as far as saying, you know what, I'm not going to be able to find anybody that I'm attracted to, so I'm just going to kind of opt out and just focus on myself. But when I hear it's between 18 and 30-year-olds, Emily, let me give you some insight into what it's like to be 18 and between an 18 and 30-year-old man. Like, your testosterone is never higher. You're constantly thinking about sex. You're constantly like thinking about women in general. And so to have 57% of those guys not like, what's going on that they would just say, I'm opting out when they're that young.
There's like that natural drive that they're just saying, no, like that's not worth it. Like, obviously there's things then that are leading men to think this way.
Exactly.
And for women.
Exactly.
So we kind of want to dive into what those reasons are.
Yes, or what our perceptions of what those reasons are.
Yes.
And, you know, we invite people to, you know, come on and talk about that with us. So, in the comment section. So, I think the first reason, because I was trying to, you know, kind of think about why is this? And, so the first reason was, of course, you know, kind of talking about women and kind of what's going on right now. And I thought about it, and it was something that, so if you think about kind of where men are getting a lot of their information nowadays, it's through social media and it's through dating apps. And so I think what they're seeing on there, they're not liking. And so they're just saying, it's not worth it to me to go for this. So one of there's a few traits that I kind of thought of that are really kind of different from in the past. And so the first one was that women are, you know, more masculinized, you know, kind of than ever. And that's not necessarily a bad thing if you're in the workplace. But if you're in a relationship, if you have two masculine energies going on, then it becomes problematic. And so guys just really want peace. They don't want to have arguments.
Yep,
Do you know
I've heard
what I
that
mean?
quite often.
Right? So if you're with somebody that is, and it doesn't matter if you're in a career or not, but if you kind of have, you know, that same kind of masculine feature, which is, you know, typically more kind of being disagreeable, kind of being, you know, kind of in a leadership role as far as planning and things like that, there can be a lot of butting of heads, you know. So what's your thoughts about, you know, kind of how that has progressed over the years? Have you seen this yourself?
I have, definitely through the feminist movement. I think that there's a lot of great things that have been created because of the feminist movement, of course. But I think that some have taken it too far, and it has swayed too far to the other end of the spectrum, to where I understand when men are saying, you know, that they're having problems with the women that they're meeting and, you know, looking at potentially to date because they are disagreeable. And because they think, I think a lot of women, because of the feminist movement, they think that this might be what men want. Like they think that being empowered and like being the leader is actually what men would either like just in general, or that what is needed in a relationship. And they don't want to give way at all. And I wouldn't say that that's like most women, but I think that there's a large group for sure that still are following full force with this more of the like all the way at the other end of the spectrum feminist movement. So of course that's going to be hard to deal with in a relationship. Like when you have two masculine energies, that, I mean, you can just think of how that would not work out. There's two leaders, you know, that aren't willing to bend at all.
Exactly, especially when it comes to trying to decipher roles, right? You know, if it's two guys who are hanging out or going on a, you know, a trip or something like that together, it's a different dynamic because most likely their interests are going to be similar. Does that make sense? You know, where, for example, the priorities that a guy might have and the priorities a woman might have may be very different. But if they have that, they still have that kind of masculine energy or traits, I should say. Energy, you know, it's not a word I like. It's something that definitely can butt heads for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and honestly, I think most men, I keep getting in trouble saying the most men, but I will say for myself, okay, I'm going to make this very clear, that if a woman is super masculine, then it just ends up being a huge turnoff.
Yeah. And this is what I'll say too about women that are super masculine. Like, I don't think they're even happy with having that kind of position and taking that masculine stance. Like, I've talked about this, and I've seen women post about this even on social media, where they will say, like, I'll give up my masculine energy when I find a really good masculine man. Like, they're waiting for it.
Yeah,
but like,
it doesn't work like that, though.
It doesn't really work like that. Like, somebody has to go first. And how is he supposed to know that you're going to, like, get into your feminine as soon as he shows you, you know, who he is? That's a really difficult thing, you know, to ask for.
Yes.
But that gets into, I think, what women are asking for is a lot at times. And that is because I think that there's no set gender rules anymore. They're not as strict. So, you know, that's harder to form a relationship and to form boundaries when you have to talk about every little thing. Like, what's expected of who, you know, who's even going to pay for the dates? Like, even that is up in arms right now. Like, people can't agree on that. Or should it be 50-50? Should it just be whoever asks whoever on the date? They should be the ones to pay because they're the ones that are asking. Like, I've heard it all.
Yeah.
And so if you can't even, like, you know, talk about those things.
Yeah, you didn't get through the first date.
No.
How are you going to navigate a relationship?
Yeah, and the thing is like, even just talking about it isn't really, it's not kosher, which is even more difficult. It's like you're supposed to read each other's minds and get it just right. And I think that women place a lot on a man as far as that goes. Like, they just want a man like the very, very beginning of dating stages to just do everything right and to just know, you know, that he should be paying for it should be a dinner date. It should be this, that, you know, all these expectations. But that goes unsaid, you know.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think that there's a problem with that, but where the problem exists then is that when it gets to, you know, more kind of into the weeds of the relationship, then it's something where it shifts. So it's kind of like in the beginning, men should kind of have the traditional, like, so women are looking kind of for traditional men to pay, take the lead, that type of thing, arrange the dates at first, but then at some point in their mind that becomes unattractive to them, or they feel like we're 50-50, and then that has to shift. But you really can't have it both ways. I think you either go into it saying, I'm a strong, independent woman, and I can pay for my own date, and then kind of moving forward in that direction. But you can't really say, I'm going to expect all these things from you.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to give, you know, traditionally what that woman would bring to the relationship.
Right. And I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that when you're looking at a relationship and what you want personally in that relationship, some people might say 50-50. There's probably plenty of people still out there that say they want more of that traditional, you know, the man does all the outside work and the woman does all the inside work. You know, she stays home and raises the kids. He works. Like, there are probably plenty of people that still want that, but they need to talk about that. And I would say that they need to date like that from the beginning, right? To not just like expect one thing and then, flip. And now I want this once we're in a relationship.
Yeah.
Once we're good. Like, that's, I think,
Do you think
hard
modern day
change.
women really know what they want, though, now? Because I almost see it as, so I would say, like, in the past generations, so I would say, like, my generation is probably the first generation that was fully kind of into the workforce. So Gen X is kind of the first where women were pretty much, because like Title IX was in 1970, and that really kind of opened up the university system to women, because at that point, I think the disparity was there was 13% more men in college than there were women. And so that really kind of opened up the doors for women to getting into careers, which is a net positive the way I see things. Because you want to give women the same opportunities as men, right?
Right, absolutely.
Now it's shifted to the point where it's 15% more women than men in school. So in the college environment. So that really did open up the doors for women, and women have proven that they're actually better in school than men on average. And most of that, I really believe that women are just better at being able to sit and take in information, where guys, minds are kind of all over the place, and, typically we're more kind of wanting to be
like hands-on
and kind of learning, through that process. So women have gotten to the point where there's equality in the workforce. And so that kind of screws up the whole gender role thing, because traditionally, and I'm not saying we go back in time, because that's never going to happen, and I don't really think that's a positive thing, but traditionally, if women did have a career, it was really kind of secondary to their family. So their family was first, and then the career. And now what I think has happened is that a lot of women put their career first, and then that is secondary.
Yes, I agree. And I think that's also going along with putting families as like the secondary thing, like including children.
Of course, yeah.
A lot of women are deciding not to have children. Even at a very young age, they're deciding that, as if their mind's not going to change. I think that modern women they're still trying to figure out what they want, honestly. And I do think that it's very individualized.
Yeah, and I have empathy for that, because it's something where, for a guy, it was pretty much always throughout history that you were going to go out and protect and provide, and that was your role. And we've been socialized to do that, and that's just inherently part of who we are. And, I take a step back from, at one point I said that, protection isn't really a thing. I heard an interesting, this anecdote, we can use it or not, but during the premiere of The Dark Knight Rises, was Batman movie in 2012 in Aurora, Colorado, there was a shooting. So I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
But what happened during that was that this guy marched into the theater and just started unloading on people. And there was three couples in there that the guys used their bodies as human shields, and for their girlfriends, they were all in their 20s, and all three men died, and all three women survived.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so when I heard that, it was something that, I think that there's definitely an innate, protection strategy, and obviously that's a very extreme case, and it's almost uncomfortable to talk about, but I think guys naturally provide that. Do you know what I mean? And so, are women going to now, if a similar situation happened, say, I can protect myself? Or,
I think so. Well, what do you think? I mean, we live in a very
I think they would be behind the guy.
They would, but think about it, it's kind of like having your mortality thrown at you. In the moment when those extreme situations happen, you get to see what people are really all about. But if that high stress situation is not happening frequently enough, or even, in some sort of daily way, what is the push? Women aren't really seeing the need for the protection, most likely, at least in the U.S. where we live, because everything is fairly safe.
I'm not saying that there isn't toxic guys out there, and there are, that do a lot of damage, for sure. It's just that I don't think it's most guys.
Yeah, well, that kind of brings in the second point, where I think a lot of women nowadays might try to spin that argument that they're not looking to date themselves because men out there need to be better.
Yeah. Well, I think that it goes kind of with when we're talking about men, and especially young men, how they've been socialized to be more feminized. So to be able to share their feelings, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's something that
there needs to be balance, right? Like imagine two people, they're just like...
Well, it's almost kind of like the roles are reversed in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like the guys are more feminized, which I think is a reaction to that kind of toxic masculinity, or whatever term you want to do, that previous generations was great at.
Right.
And so it's something that they're saying, okay, let's correct this, but then they overcorrect. So guys end up being more feminine, and that's something where it has to land in the middle. And then for women, they've in the past generations have always been, kind of super feminine, and now I think they've overcorrected as well. And so, on average, they're much more masculine than, let's say, my parents' generation, for sure.
I think so too. And I think that it's difficult because it's almost like we're asking both genders to be able to switch back and forth, right? For like one to be able to have an emotional moment and for the other to be able to handle that. And I think that's hard. If women are saying that they want their man to open up and be more emotional, like they need to be ready to receive that.
Yes.
Because when they don't, like that's where there's that pattern going forward where like that man's not going to trust opening up to a woman because that's really damaging. And I don't think women really experience that. They don't know how that is to like open up to somebody and just for it to be like shut down completely. Because usually it's received well, and they're just supported by a man.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the kind of factors is that people don't know their gender roles, and it's, and in order to be in the workplace, you kind of have to have, some competition and some disagreeableness in you, to kind of move up that corporate ladder.
For sure.
Because it's competitive. And so it makes sense why women in general would kind of go more that direction. So it's
switching that off. And I've heard of women like being successful in doing that. Like they'll have this really high-powered job, and then they'll come home, and like they don't want to bring that home, and they do want to be kind of more submissive. Yeah. And they want him to take the lead. I think the problem is oftentimes where women are not separating those two out. And or maybe they're not even working, and they're like just trying to play that role at home.
Yes.
It's difficult.
Exactly. People can learn from you that that is possible. And I think that would be the future, honestly, for women, is to be able to get to the point where they're able to balance the two.
Yeah.
And so, and it's just tough though, because in order to be in a really competitive job market, you got to have to cultivate those traits, and then it's hard to kind of turn that off.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's asking, a traditional man to then, come home and then, cry on his wife's shoulder. Yeah. And most men are not going to do that.
It makes me think of work-life balance. I think that's really what people are struggling with when they say that they struggle with work-life balance. It's the switch. It's not even the literal time at work versus the literal time at home with your kids. Like it's the switch. It's the, are you putting your phone down and spending quality time with your kids and you're just focused on them? Or is work text still coming through your phone? And then you're dealing with that and a screaming toddler. That's what's stressful. And then you can't adjust in that case. So, I mean, I think that leads into a lot of things that people can do, including setting up good boundaries and just having that mindset too of, what creates a healthy relationship when they're driving home.
Yeah. I think the second part where a lot of people are opting out, and I think this is true for men and women, is that, and the studies haven't shown this as much for men, but they have for women, is that generally speaking, most women are not attracted to most men.
I have seen that study. Yeah.
So, and I think that that's true. And I think the reason is that guys are, especially when they're young, and especially if they weren't raised by a father in the house, it's something where they have developed, kind of an adversity to doing typical things that would be considered to be attractive to women. So, for example, there's a lot of young guys that I've worked with, or I just kind of see with online, that just do not take care of their appearance at all. So they're, kind of slovenly. That's the, not only just in their appearance, but in their every kind of space that they're in. And, you can speak to this, but that's got to be a huge turnoff for women.
Yeah.
Once you get to a certain age. I think when women are younger, they're more accepting of that maybe.
Yeah.
But once you get past 25, that just becomes a turnoff.
Yeah.
If you would see, a guy's apartment and he has, doesn't even have a headboard.
Right. So I would say, especially now, like if most women are wanting 50-50, if they're looking at a man that doesn't have his stuff together, he doesn't even have a bed, he doesn't have, clothes in the drawer, they're all over the floor.
Yeah.
He hasn't cleaned the bathroom in, 6 months. Then what that tells her is that she's just going to be taking care of him.
Yes,
and
exactly.
It's going to be this is my third child after they've had 2 children together.
Yes.
And even if they get that far, even looking at childcare, he can't take care of himself, how is he going to help with the children?
Yeah.
Maybe that would have worked 50 years ago when, again, gender roles told her she was going to be taking care of these things.
Well, and she wasn't working.
Exactly. She was home to do that. And as long as he was working and made a good income,
that was enough.
That kind of worked. Yeah. She would call and make all his doctor's appointments, make his dentist appointments. Even my parents, my mom will do that for my dad.
Yeah.
That's just how it was. So I don't think it was as big of a turnoff for women 50 years ago.
No.
But now it is.
Yeah, it's a huge turnoff. And what you just said makes a lot of sense as far as no woman wants to take on a third child or a fourth child or whatever it be, or second or one. If they don't want to have children, they don't want to have a grown one. So that's where I think men have to level up and get to the point of, when I was younger, they kind of called it metrosexual. I'm sure you've heard of that term.
I have.
But it's something where it typically, kind of encompass the way a guy presented himself. But I think it can go further than that as far as, just kind of making sure that you take care of yourself and your surroundings and your bills, and you're able to call your own doctor's appointments, and you're able to go follow through with that and things like that. Where I've worked with a lot of young guys who don't even pick up the phone to call anyone. So they have a lot of anxiety about, making that type of contact. So that's something where I think guys have to level up in order for women to be more attracted to them.
Yeah. So in your experiences, did that kind of result because those men didn't have a strong father role?
A lot of times, yes.
Yeah. And then what, would the mom kind of compensate and take care of those things?
She'd either take care of those things or she would just try to nag him, and then there would be, butting heads, because I think naturally, or it's probably a combination of both nature and nurture, but men aren't really socialized to, do those kind of tasks. So if you have a cleaning competition, a woman's going to win 9 times out of 9. Yeah, hands down. But it doesn't mean that men are incapable of this.
No.
Right? It's just that they haven't really embraced making sure, and they don't really care a lot of times. But if they're looking to attract somebody, they better care. Because if they don't have that squared away nowadays, women are going to say, hey, I have a job too. I'm making the same amount of money as you.
Yeah.
But my place is pristine.
Yeah. And I think
whereas
women
yours is trashed.
Exactly. And women want to see you as you're going to be in the relationship, and they don't want to look at you and have you just say, well, once I have somebody in my life, I'll clean this up and I'll be more organized and I'll stay groomed. Like, they don't want to really hear that, because they could just look at somebody else that does have their stuff together.
Yeah.
And they're not going to waste their time on you.
And so I think when it comes to guys, and this leads into the Manosphere messaging, is that it's really more about, when they say level up, it's about money, it's about status, it's about gym type of thing. But you don't really ever hear about people talking about just making sure that, you're really presentable, and that the environment that you live in is presentable, and that you're able to take care of yourself sufficiently.
Yes.
And that a woman will just be a nice addition to your life, and that man will be a nice addition to hers, and you can work in partnership. So I think that's where guys really kind of have to level up. Where I think with women, it's the reverse. I think women are great at having things that are pristine and like soft looks maxing. Yeah. But when I think it comes to the hard stuff, like going to the gym or, the more embracing the kind of more feminine traits that guys typically are attracted to, that's where they kind of fall short.
Yeah, I think so too. They go for more of those soft looks maxing. So like the nails being done, the hair being done perfectly, the makeup, rather than going to the gym 1 hour a day or even 4 days a week to lose weight. I can see that. What do you think that creates that terrible combination then, where women aren't really trying very hard with the hard looks maxing, but the guys are, but they're looking to the guys like, ooh, you aren't trying enough because you can't even do these little things. Yeah.
I think that for that specific issue, I think that it leads into that body positivity movement, so it's essentially saying, and this is where I think feminism has gone too far, is that everyone's beautiful any size. You don't have to put any effort in to being healthier or looking attractive, except for the soft looks maxing stuff. But here's where I have a bone of contention, is that to me, it's like they're going overboard with that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So like if they put more effort, and you do see like I love seeing like more women in the gym, for example, who are actually lifting weights and becoming stronger and things like that. But it's something where, like, for example, when we talk about the makeup and nails and hair extensions and eyelash extensions, things like that, it's gone so overboard that most guys are not attracted to that. But for some reason, women have a blind spot, and they think that looks good.
Yeah, because they'll look at other women, and especially influencers on social media. And as a woman, you'll look at a woman with that stuff on, and you'll think that she looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
So you're mimicking that, essentially.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that that's really what men are attracted to.
Yeah, so everybody's trying to look like Kim Kardashian, right? And so, but they don't have the money to get all the plastic surgeries and things like that. So I think what's happening is that, so women are kind of over soft looks maxing, and guys are kind of doing the opposite, where a lot of them are, kind of into the gym and the fitness culture, but they're not embracing kind of the soft looks maxing stuff, which would, to me, encompass, things like you can tidy up your apartment. It's not that difficult to learn how to do basic cleaning. I know it's a pain. Nobody likes to clean, right? So, I
don't think so.
but it's got to, unless you have OCD and, it relieves some stress or something. But the reality is that if you want to live in an environment that is clean, you have to put effort into it.
Yeah. I would say especially cleaning your car out, because, that's going to probably be the first thing that she sees.
Exactly.
And that'll be a big turnoff if she just sees that your car is a disaster.
Yeah. So I think what we're looking at is that, so women are not attracted to men for those reasons. So I think a lot of men are over-feminized and they're slobs. And so they're saying, I'm not attracted to that, which, again, it makes sense. And then men are saying, okay, women are very masculine, and they are, going way overboard on this soft looks maxing stuff that ends up becoming a turnoff. So the combination, I think for both groups of people who are on the market are saying, I'd just rather opt out.
Yeah, I can see that. But do you think that it takes like a failed relationship before that happens? Or do you think that's happening even beforehand?
I think it's starting to happen earlier and earlier. That's why, when we first started speaking about this, I was shocked that there was that many men that were just saying, like, I'm not even interested in hookups.
I know that it's amazing to me, because I feel like when I was in my 20s, like, for people to have said that, it was because they went through a horrible relationship and they really just needed some time away.
Yeah.
But I guess it does make sense, like the influence of social media and dating apps and these experiences that people are having from a very young age, that those are like also negative experiences. They're smaller, right? I would say it's smaller than having a relationship and then breaking up. But if you have so many of those small negative experiences, I could see how that would add up.
Yeah.
Especially for men.
Yeah. Well, here's the, I hear what you're saying. Don't disagree at all. But let's say you're back in the dating market again. And so then the other equation is that women are having an abundance of choices, which is not a good thing, where guys are in a deficit.
Right.
So that also sets this dynamic up of, if you're a guy and you're on a dating app and you're not getting any matches at all, or very few, and then maybe they don't even respond to you or whatever.
Yeah.
After a while, that really starts to weigh on your self-esteem.
Yeah.
And you just rather say, like, why am I participating in something that is giving me nothing back?
Right. That's that small negative experience.
Exactly. Where women are on there and they have this abundance of choices, so they select the top guys, but then the top guys are not interested in a relationship with, because most women, just like most men, are kind of in that, middle of the bell curve, that normie range, right? And so, but they a lot of times have access to these top guys, but these top guys, most of the time, do not want these relationships. So it ends up becoming, they get jaded.
Right.
Because, some guy hooked up with them and maybe had, and this I think happens most of the time, in order to kind of get there, he had his intentions that were deceitful. So that ends up becoming all men are trash.
Right.
Right?
And I think that women can become jaded even before hooking up with him. Like, I think that she could feel led on to a degree by a man that she really is interested in. But, he has, if he's a 10% guy, he has his list of 20 other women.
Of course.
That then he's, spending time with, and she's sort of on the hook waiting.
Yeah.
And that alone, even if he doesn't get to her, that alone.
And I think more and more women, honestly, this is tough, but are willing to share a 10% man than be with somebody who's on par with them.
Yeah, and try to beat out the competition.
Either,
That's what women
will either beat out.
Might try to do.
They'll either try to beat out the competition, or they'll just take their place as the second or third side chick and be happy with it.
Yeah.
Versus settling for
guess
something.
So. I can't imagine. Yeah, versus settling.
But in their mind, they're settling. But the reality is, what they perceive as settling is with a guy who's on their level.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it ends up creating this dynamic where women feel jaded as well. So they're saying, okay, I'm not attracted to most of the population of guys. The guys I am attracted to aren't interested in having a relationship with me. So I'm not going to, participate. I'm just going to focus on my career and be a boss girl.
Yes. And I think that's what they can do from a young age. And society tells them that, right? They tell them, just wait, have fun in your 20s, date around if you want, but don't get serious. And then you can still have a family, into your 40s.
Yeah.
You can still have kids.
Yeah.
That's such a lie.
Yeah.
It's not that easy.
Well, let's say a woman goes through her whole 20s just working on her career and having fun. By the time she gets to her 30s, then the big question is, where have all the good men gone?
Yeah.
And the good men at that point are dating women who are younger because for most men, they're going to be more attracted to younger women than a woman who has partied through her 30s. And some women, I've seen them that have done this, they can look pretty rough by the time they're even in their early 30s.
Yeah, because it's unhealthy habits.
Yeah, exactly. If you're drinking constantly and staying up late and, and hooking up all these people and all this, and just kind of living that party lifestyle, that can, and, women's beauty standards are still higher than men. And men can do a lot of things to kind of mask that. But when women try to mask that with makeup and things like that, it doesn't really work.
It can look worse.
Yeah, it can look worse for sure. Yeah. So I think that's poor messaging that women are receiving. And, on one level, it kind of makes sense as far as getting established and being emotionally mature before you decide to settle down and having some experiences. But there's a big difference between being a party girl and being a relationship person, and those relationships just don't work out because maybe, you're not ready or it was a bad fit or whatever it is.
Yeah. I wonder too if a lot of people, if they participate in those superficial relationships when they're young because they're afraid of being hurt. Like I think that there's women that think that they can just date around and figure out the perfect man and then get serious when she's in her 30s and just find that perfect man. And all the stars will align and she won't have to experience a huge heartbreak. But that's just an avoidance of pain, and it's probably not going to work out. Like if you haven't worked through long-term relationships when you were in your 20s, to have a long-term relationship in your 30s, especially nowadays, I think that's really challenging. Especially because of how society is and how women do have like these easy options. You can easily see as a woman that the grass is greener. So what's going to keep you in that relationship?
Yeah.
When first of all, you're used to having short-term relationships in your 20s.
Yes.
What's going to keep you in it when things aren't perfect?
Exactly.
And you're having a disagreement.
And that's inevitable.
Right. That's going to happen at some point. Exactly. And then how are you going to react? Are you going to be steady and work through it and have an uncomfortable relationship for some time period? Or are you just going to be like, oh, maybe this wasn't the one.
Yeah.
And I need to look elsewhere.
Exactly. And I think a lot of women who go through that party stage when they're in their 20s and they see it as empowering, it's not empowering. It actually ends up being something which is going to harm them in the long run. And, I think it's the same for guys as well. I think if their long-term goal is to get in a relationship with a woman, then that shouldn't be their objective, is to, get as many sexual partners as possible.
Yeah.
Because that just doesn't work for either one. But, that's where kind of that, especially, kind of in these larger metropolitan areas, there's this, huge amount of messaging going on saying that this, should be the case. This is kind of how you should live your life.
Yeah. What do you think about hookup culture? And for the people that don't want to participate in it, do you think that they're also stepping out and they're part of that single group that's saying, I don't want to partake in this?
So are you speaking about men or women?
Both.
Okay.
Probably more women.
Well, I think that if a woman doesn't want to participate in hookup culture and she has a good self-awareness about where she is in the dating market, I think, honestly, it could really be easy mode for her.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because there's so many guys out there that would be in the same category as her as far as, total SMV, that she could have a relationship really easily. But I think what's happening is that she's getting this inflated sense of herself, and she's saying, I don't want these guys. Because
that would be seen as settling, she thinks.
That would be seen as settling.
Yeah.
And so, it goes with that when, and I know these aren't the best sources, but you'll see on like a lot of different podcasts when they have women on there, when they ask them to rate themselves, they all say they're 10s.
Yes.
Do you know, right?
Every time.
Where at least guys will say, you know, like even good-looking guys will say,
Yeah.
like, I'm a 7 or something
Yeah.
like that. So I think what's happened is that there's kind of like this mass delusion going on of where, you know, kind of people fit in.
Yeah, because she would rather date this very specific type that, let's call him the top 10% guy. But if she can't reach him, he's unreachable to her, she might rather just step back and say, well, I'm not dating, you know, and I'm just going to wait it out, work on myself, work on my career,
Yes.
do all these things that, you know, she thinks might attract him down the line.
Yes. Well, and that's the other thing too, is that, you know, for the most part, men do not really care about any of that.
That's what's interesting, right?
Yeah.
Like the things that she'll end up focusing on are not the right things that would attract him down the line.
Yes.
Because he doesn't care about her career.
No, well, not in the same sense that he would care about other areas that she would bring to the table.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
So lower on the list.
It's way down on the list. Do you know what I mean? So it's really like, is this a person who's a good companion? Is this a person who is nurturing, is kind, is caring, who is interesting, who I can have a good conversation with, that I'm attracted to? You know, all those things. Those are the things that are on the top of the list. And then if you have a career, that's great. Like, you know, we can talk about that, but it's not something that men really care about that much.
Yeah.
You know, because if you think about the traditional gender roles or the way that people date, is that, you know, a guy would date a barista at Starbucks, no matter how successful he was, but a woman who was successful would never date a guy
Yeah.
who worked at Starbucks.
Double standard, right?
Right? Exactly. So that's that hypergamy again, which keeps coming up, but it's at play right now because women are on equal standings, or even getting to the point where they're starting to overachieve than men. So if something doesn't change, there's going to be continuing to be more and more people that opt out.
I can see that. It's like she's working herself further away from the dating world, really.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, if a man is looking for somebody that's really compassionate and caring, you know, when is she really working on that? Like if she's focused in on her career, is she spending as much time with friends and family and actually being able to demonstrate those things? And family units really are starting to disintegrate more.
Of course.
And definitely earlier in life. You know, it's like kids turn 18 and off they go and they're just independent little pods and that's it. Like they're not taking on like that caregiver role back to siblings or parents. So when is she really working on those qualities? Probably never. And especially if she's not in a relationship at all and she's just kind of standing on the outskirts of hookup culture or participating in hookup culture.
Yeah.
Either way, she's not working on those qualities.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to, so most of the women we're speaking about are more kind of the Gen Zers. And what I think is that because their moms were kind of the first generation that was kind of fully immersed into the workforce, they were given that message that you need to take care of yourself because a man might not be around to do that. And that's not necessarily negative, but it isn't having that balance about bringing the other qualities in there as well.
Yeah, exactly. I can totally see that. Yeah.
So it's something where men, you know, aren't being socialized to do the things that they kind of need to do. And that's where I think getting to the point of saying, you know, I need to learn how to cook and clean, like just for myself. Because if you want a 50-50 relationship, you know, there's going to be times where if you are in a relationship or married, you know, your wife's going to be sick or just not feeling great or just had a long day or whatever. And, you know, I think it should be, a guy should be capable of being able to throw a meal together.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting to me is that, like, I've heard some successful men speak, and they will say that their money that they make as a really successful guy in the workforce is the family money. And whatever money she makes is her money. And I don't like, that's not right. That's like, what is she's getting the best of both worlds.
Exactly.
Yeah. If we're talking about 50-50, both partners should be thinking that it's going to be truly 50-50 in all aspects or close to it, balance at least. Mm-hmm. So it's exactly that. Like as a man, if you're thinking like, oh yeah, 50-50 relationship, like there's some upsides, right? So you should be willing to accept her finances helping as the family money. Because I think there's some really masculine guys that have a hard time even accepting that. Like they just want her to, that's your money. My money is our money. But I think that they have to kind of get over that and be willing to accept it.
Yeah. Of course.
And of course, her being willing to provide it. That might have to come first. That comes first. But then also where, he's willing to balance out like the cooking, willing to know how to cook. Or at least the grilling.
Well, I think guys have always been experts at grills. But, I was thinking about more like like working as partnerships. So for example, if the woman is preparing dinner, maybe if there is children, the guy is giving the kids a bath.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That type of thing. So they're working as a team in order to kind of get all those done. Or, if one person cooks the meal, the other person does the dishes.
Right. Because having two cooks in the kitchen might be a little bit more challenging. It makes sense to split off roles.
Exactly. And you'd be surprised how many couples therapy sessions I've had that people would get into heated arguments about dishes.
I saw this really cute couple on TikTok. They have, it looks like a very busy life. They both work full time, mom and dad. They have 3 really little kids. And what they do every night is they flip a coin to determine who's going to give the kids baths. And then the other one cleans up.
Okay. Yeah.
I just think that's such a cool idea.
Yeah.
Like just give it to the luck of the coin and, you're not trying to battle over, I don't want to do the bath night tonight. I'd rather do the dishes. But they're both working on something. It's not one is sitting on the couch.
Yeah.
Like they both finish and then they both have like tea together in the bed. Mm-hmm. So they have this awesome routine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where in the past it would have been the woman taking the majority of those tasks on, and the guy would be just kind of watching Sports Center or something, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where I think guys got to step up as well, is saying that it's not the 50s anymore, and I've got to do my part. And I think that if a guy was with somebody that he was really into, I think most guys would be able to adapt to that.
Yeah.
I just think a lot of guys, honestly, weren't socialized to have that skill set.
I know. Do you think that, like, for most guys, it takes having that woman in his life first and then wanting to make the changes? Like, do you think a lot of guys operate in that fashion?
I think most guys don't think about it that much. And, until it's almost kind of too late.
Like it's just not on their mind to do those things.
Yeah, it's just not on their mind.
Yeah.
Like, I know like a couple of really successful guys that do really well in their career. And both of them are complete slobs. Like you walk into their house and it's just a disaster area. And it's almost because they're so focused on their task that part of their life, they just completely almost abandon.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's almost like maybe a waste of time in their mind. It's not a task.
Yeah. Or it's just, it's not important. And they're just so accustomed to it. But if a woman would walk in either of these guys' places, they would be, completely turned off.
Yeah.
By that. And so that's where I think guys have to step up their game. And that really doesn't take that much. And so, I think that's where, when we're kind of speaking to an audience, it's really saying, if guys would be able to kind of step up in just that one area, I think that they would be much more appealing to females.
Yes. And I think for women, like what we were saying, if they kind of step into their feminine more and get rid of some of that masculine energy, at least like when you're dating and when you're face to face with a man, I think that's important.
Yeah, exactly.
And then believing that, like the things that I saw a TikTok today, because it makes me think of this. I saw a woman saying that she really loves the bare minimum, and she gets a lot of flack
Okay.
She gets a lot of flack. Like, imagine, right? This girl's
Uh-huh.
saying it on TikTok. Lots of flack from women,
Yeah.
of course,
Mm-hmm.
that like she shouldn't accept just the bare minimum.
Yeah.
But her point is that she's appreciative of anything. Like and that
standards
doesn't
are
that sound
low.
bad?
It sounds terrible.
It sounds bad as I'm saying it, but the way that she said it, it was like, I appreciate him sending me good morning texts.
Yeah.
You know, I appreciate, like, and she listed off all these things that women today would consider bare minimum. But the thing is that it's all effort from one human to another human. And she's probably providing some of that effort back. But when you don't appreciate any of that effort until it hits a certain mark, you're probably less likely to give any of it back.
Yeah.
And then how are you forming a relationship off of that? Because he can sense that you're not appreciating it
Yes.
at all. So, I mean, her point is that she's just, she has a lot of gratitude and she lives by that. And it makes her happy. And she's like kind of always in this happy bubble of whatever he does for her. She really focuses on that. And so it's a real positive mindset. And you think about the opposite, right? Where if she didn't appreciate that and it was like she was searching for the big things and he did like a million of the little things, but none of them count. She's waiting for the top things, like him buying her $1,000 necklace at Christmas, you know, and surprising her with it. Like these like very specific things. If he never reaches that mark, she's just going to be in that negative mindset and she's going to see him as not good enough. And eventually, of course, you know where that's going to lead. Like,
Yeah.
that's just not going to work out.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think the other, you know, major thing that is that so men have very few options, and the options that they do have, they're not liking either. As far as, you know, saying, I mean, the reason that the passport bro movement is becoming such a thing is because of the fact that they're wanting kind of someone who's going to kind of have those feminine traits. And a lot of women from these countries tend to have those traits, and it becomes very appealing to them. And so, you know, think about what it would take for a guy to uproot and move to a country like the Philippines, which is, or Venezuela, for example. Like, guys can clean up in Venezuela because 99% of the population is in extreme poverty. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like to move to a place, like voluntarily move to a place that you could say that the family structure is much better than here and that people support each other. And, you know, there's just a lot of great qualities within the people. But as far as the environment is terrible. And so if a man is willing to move to get a wife and a family, but he has to, the trade-off is that he has to kind of live in this, you know, developing country, like that shows how much, for the guys who are looking, will go to extremes to do that. Can you ever honestly, like in today's world, a modern woman would never even consider that?
No, it definitely says something. I mean, it says that he is fully convinced that he's not going to find what he wants and needs here where he lives, and he has to go elsewhere, and that's his solution.
Exactly. And it ends up, but it's such an endeavor to take on.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So that's something where I can see a lot of guys saying, you know what, I don't know if I can do that. But I also, you know, don't like what is going on here. So maybe just, you know, not dating at all might be the best preference at all, or at least for now. You know, especially if they're that young saying this. I can't imagine being like 19, 20 years old and saying, I'm out.
I can't either. I mean, I can't imagine in my 30s to even want that.
Of course.
Yeah. So we know that there's things coming from both sides, from both genders, that is creating this situation. And it's like neither one is bending very much. So what do you think lies in the future? Like, do you think that it's going to get better? Or do you think it's going to get worse as far as the amount of people that are single right now not wanting to date?
Honestly, I think that it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that, I think that one of the two problems is that people are getting different messaging. And so what's happening is that women are getting messaging from women and they're kind of bashing men. And then men are getting messages from men and they're kind of bashing women. Mm-hmm. So it's creating this gender war that's going on. And it's something where if you go down the path of trying to consume material that is going to bash women, it's very easy to find. Yeah. And if you're a woman and you're going, to find material that's going to bash men, that's easy to find too. And those in negativity sells.
It does.
So, who's the biggest content creator on the female side on TikTok, for example?
Probably that Drew Afalfo.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she's
full of negativity. She just bashes men.
Yeah. And
she shows the worst of men.
Exactly. So, but she's got 8 million followers. Mm-hmm. And she's probably not the only one, but she's probably one of the biggest. And so she's focusing on bashing men. And, there's plenty of men out there to be bashed, but she's not ever focusing on the positive aspects that men bring to the table. Right. It's all about fat phobia and, all this other stuff. And so to me, I see that as she's kind of the female Andrew Tate. Mm-hmm. So for example, the way I look, I did some research about Andrew Tate. So the way I kind of look at him at this point is that I think Andrew did a very good job of kind of understanding what was going on as far as what kind of men need to do and the state of kind of where things are. But I think his solutions were completely off base. Mm. So he's great at diagnosis, but bad at solutions.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? But a lot of young guys looked up to him because there were certain aspects of what he brought to the table that were very positive.
Right, because they were relating to everything that he was saying.
Exactly.
Because that was their reality.
Yes.
But then for him to give solutions that were bad.
Yeah, like saying women should, be property.
Yeah.
That's just one example off the top of my head. Uh-huh. But there was many more that are just not realistic.
Yeah.
Especially in the modern age. If he would have given that message in the 50s,
maybe.
Maybe, but now it's not. But she's kind of the female version of him.
Yeah.
But you think about their archetypes as far as kind of what we've been speaking about so far. He's this guy who presents himself as ultra masculine.
Right.
In every way possible, where she is kind of like the modern day feminist. Right. Where she's overweight, she's got the soft looks maxing overboard. Mm-hmm. With the super long nails and, the cursing and all this and just attacking, men. And so a lot of guys are looking up to someone like Andrew Tate who's got really bad solutions. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of women are looking to her, which, she's trying to empower women, but she's doing that by bringing men down. So how is that going to solve this mating crisis?
Yeah, it's not. It'll make it worse for sure. I mean, just for an example, look at Drew. You as a man, would you be attracted to her?
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah. You would never desire to date, even try?
No. Nothing.
And I could say the same about Andrew Tate.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Yeah.
So if these genders are modeling themselves after these types of role models, that's the reaction they're going to get from the opposite gender.
Yeah. And I think there's some really good male role models out there. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's where men have to kind of look towards.
Yes.
And, so the Andrew Hubermans of the world or the David Goggins of the world. You know, like these guys, to me, they're not putting down women at all. They're just, trying to uplift men. And so, and they're able to understand, and they're in healthy relationships themselves, that type of thing. I don't know, are there women out there that are, like you would be in that camp, but the problem is that no women are watching you.
No women are watching. Because they see me favoring the man's perspective. And because I don't think I put women down.
No, you don't do it by putting women down. Mostly you try to lift men up.
Yes.
And call women out for their bad behaviors.
Yeah.
But not in the way that she does it. Where
right,
she's
not
like
personal attacking.
Yeah, exactly.
And going for like the superficial physical features.
Exactly.
And all that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is that for women, is there even any like content creators out there that have big followings that are preaching, like that you can have a career, but you can also have a relationship and a family?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, I think there's a void right now, right?
I think there is. The only ones that come close to it, I would say, are ones that are more so relationship TikTokers. Okay. So they are married and they like have their husband in the TikTok channel as well. And they talk about like their relationship.
I think that there's not a lot of good modeling out there. So it creates this gender divide. So I can understand, if women aren't interested in, today's modern guy, and the guy isn't interested in today's modern women, why, if you're not in a relationship, why you decide to kind of opt out?
It does make sense. I think we'll be interested to hear from our viewers any additional thoughts that they have on why maybe they would want to stay single or what they've heard is going on out there. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe for the next video.